heck are you doing?
Well. I knew you've been doing your reviews down here, so I've just been waiting until you came.
How long have you been sitting there?
It's been a couple of weeks. I didn't really want to miss your review, so I've been just kind of sitting here waiting. So, since I'm already here, what are we reviewing this week?
Okay. You got me. Fine. We'll do the review together. Let me just go get the movie, and then we can do the review. Okay?
Perfect. I can't wait to review that with you. I'll let you go get that, and we can get started.
Okay. You wait here. I'll be back in 5. Alright. Well, I guess we have no choice. We're gonna have to do the review up here today. We're talking about Zootopia. Let's get into it. When I first saw the trailer for this film in theaters, my first thought was that I need to go see this movie the second it comes out. The trailer alone was just beautifully animated, very funny, and it captured me right away. And the first thing I noticed was that the eyes were really well done, and everything else around it was just really well animated. And I knew that I really wanted to see this film. And when it did come out, I went and saw it pretty much the opening week, and I absolutely loved it. And I went to everybody I knew, and I told them, you have to go see this movie. It's amazing. You have to go see this movie. It's amazing. Why aren't you seeing this movie? And then when it came out on DVD, I went and bought it immediately. And then when I got it on DVD, I watched it immediately, which I almost never do with any film that I've seen. And then I just absolutely was enthralled by this movie. And for a long time, and even still now, several years later, it's still just it quickly became one of my favorite Disney movies. So as I mentioned just now, the animation was definitely one of the first things that I noticed in the trailer. And then in the actual film, throughout the whole movie, the animation just continues to blow me away. For a short time on my channel here, I was an animator. We'll put air quotes around that, animator, because I only technically finished one project, and that was a 30-second, clip of, two characters, fighting in a field that, the timing was all off, and, the music was awful, and I was just I don't like this, and I took it down. And that was the only one I technically was able to finish without the program, crashing on me. Just on my short little animation projects that I worked on for a very long time, I could tell you that animation is extremely hard work, and you have to be extremely dedicated to it, which I was not. I was working on it when I felt like it, and I almost never felt like it. But the animation in this movie is just top-notch. It is so good. There is so much detail and effort and time just put into this, and it shows, and it just is so much better because of it. The other very good thing that I liked about this film, before we get into it really, was the characters. These characters are very real feeling. Despite being an animated kids movie with talking animals, these characters feel very real. They feel like real people doing the best they can in the situations that they're in the way they were raised up. As soon as you meet any of the characters, from Judy to Nick to even people who aren't the main characters, the Chief, Clawhauser, the Weasel who sells the DVDs and stuff. You just get a strong sense of who these people are and maybe the paths they took in their lives to lead them to where they are now. Whereas Judy is very dedicated and has worked really hard on her craft. It's Bogo is trying to run the police force and deal with this, new recruit who's not exactly following the rules and is trying to get what she wants out of it. And he's no, just do your job. And then, the Weasel who's selling his DVDs in a way he's trying to make a living, but at the same time, it's like he's not a very nice person. He's had many different things in his life that probably led him there, but the point is, the characters are all very strong. Everyone has a personality. Everyone stays on character throughout the film. Even when someone goes through a big emotional shift, it still feels like a shift that their character or person would do without being out of character for them. In the film, we are told that there are 12 different biomes where the animals in Zootopia can live. We get a few quick glimpses at some of the areas that you can see. Like, you see a lot of City Central, so just like an actual cityscape. You see Tundra Town, and you see the rainforest biome. So those are 3 of the 12 that we get to spend the majority of the movie in. While she's on the train going in, she also sees the Sahara Square, and she sees, actually, I think that's it. She sees a total of the 4 different biomes, and then on top of that we also have Bunny Burrow, so that's like 5 different areas of the film, and we don't even go into Sahara Square, we just kind of see it from the train really quickly as she goes through. I think it would have been interesting to explore some of the other areas as well, but I can see why they didn't, because then the film would be too cluttered with just like trying to get all the areas in there. So if they do a sequel, it would be really cool to see maybe them exploring some other areas of Zootopia. Because they had mentioned that there were 12 biomes in just Zootopia alone, so it would be cool to see if we could get more of that. It would also be interesting to see what the rest of the world looks like, because besides Bunny Burrow and some other mentions of other similar, like, out in the country kind of cities around Zootopia, Zootopia itself is kind of like a big continent with water around it, like a little peninsula. And it's like you see some mountains on the outside of the city, but it's like, what about the rest of this world? What does this world look like? Is it got other cities like Zootopia? Is Zootopia the only city like this? Is everything else in the planet either just barren, or is it like just little, like, what does it look like? And I think that would be an interesting thing to explore in a potential sequel, as well as the other biomes in the city itself. One of the first people Judy meets in Zootopia outside of the police force is Nick Wilde, the other main lead. And I thought that the introduction of his character, then his turnaround from that introduction, because he's introduced as just this dad making ends meet, trying to make his son's birthday extra special. And the turnaround is when you find out that he actually was just pulling a con on Judy, and that he was then proceeding to go on and do other cons throughout his day. Like, what was a big moment for Judy, like, sticking up for this dad and getting him this popsicle and whatever, wasn't even a big deal for Nick, and he's been doing this every single day for, like, basically his whole life. And then, when she confronts him about it, his explanation of his actions shows that his character is very well defined. He is one of those guys that has been doing this since they were a kid. He knows every single rule and how to bend them just enough to not break them and get sent to jail. And it also gives you an idea of his character overall, where he's just kind of accepted the role of being the sneaky fox. He's not really trying to prove anyone wrong. He's just doing what he has done since he was a kid. He's just pulling cons and making money, trying to just get by and forget about their day. And it also introduces him as a character that knows people, which will become important later when Judy needs information on a case she gets to work on. And the fact that he knows a lot of people and he has a very good insight on a lot of people shows Judy that he is someone who could possibly help her in solving the case that she gets to work on. One thing I noticed about Judy's interaction with most of the other officers in Precinct 1 is that right off the bat, they all kind of treat her she doesn't belong there. It's like, whether they're nice about it like Clawhauser, where it's just talking behind her back and like being like, oh, she's not gonna make it a week kind of thing, or if they're like blatantly obvious about not wanting her to be there, like the rhino she sits next to in Roll Call, and Bogo being very like, Bogo assigning her to parking duty has nothing to do with like, calling her out because she's a bunny. Everyone gets a crap job every once in a while. It's like, it's her first day. Why would he give her an important case without seeing her how she operates in the field on her own? But the way Judy kind of handles it also kind of plays into it of he gives her her job, and instead of just going, oh, okay, I'll, work hard on this job and then get a better job later on, she then proceeds to try to fight him about it and be like, oh, you're just treating me like a token bunny. And it's like, well, he is, but at the same time, it's your first day. Do you really expect him to be like, all right, go find the missing mammals, all of them, first day, go. You're the valedictorian of your class, I believe in. No, it's like you have to prove your worth somehow, but it's at the same time, it's a bit on both sides, where it's like both parties were a little playing into not really communicating well. But then when, the guy, the weasel, is stealing the night howlers from the store, the rhino officer that arrives at the scene is then proceeding to be unnecessarily like mean to Judy about it, where it's like, hey, wait for the real cops, and hey, you can't chase that bad guy even though you're like the same size and you can go places I clearly can't, and you're clearly doing a better job than I am. Whether she was like handling this job, like, the chasing of the weasel, in the best way possible is beside the point. She should at least get some acknowledgement that she was able to catch the weasel. I agree with Bogo's decision that she does need to get some kind of reprimandation for, like, endangering the people, little Rodenta, and, like, scurrying and, like, all the running through the cities and stuff. But it's like, at the same time, I feel like he was being especially harsh on her and kind of overlooking her, like, her actual police work because he is looking for her to fail. On top of that, though, Judy definitely breaks the rules in this scene and then continues to break and bend the rules throughout the entire film. To the point where she's literally working with the mob of Tundra Town to get what she wants, and working, like, basically blackmailing this, like, Nick into helping her until he helps her on his own volition. And he does a lot of other stuff throughout the film of questionable morality. She really should have faced a lot harsher consequences for her actions. And yes, she saved the city and she stopped the Night Howler outbreak and she did all these things. But it's, at the end of the day, she's still breaking a lot of rules, and she never once has to face any real-life consequences for that. On the flip side of that, Nick's story is very interesting to me. Because while, again, he originally didn't want to help the investigation at all, he was literally just there because he was being blackmailed to be there. And he starts off really hindering Judy's investigation by, helping her in very unhelpful ways. Well, he brings her to the Naturalist Club, knowing that it's going to, like, skeeve her out and make her uncomfortable. And she powers through that. And then he brings her to the DMV, knowing full well that he's gonna, like, get Flash and the other sloths to just, like, completely waste her whole time. Because he doesn't really know much about Judy at that point. He doesn't know that she's on a time crunch. He doesn't know that her job is on the line. He doesn't really know or care at the time that people are actually missing and that lives are at stake. However, what shows as he learns about these things, as he goes on this investigation, it shows his true character kind of showing through. Because the more he learns about Judy, the more he learns about the case files that he's actually helping her investigate, the more he begins to become invested in them. It's not just, I'm helping this cop that might send me to prison. It becomes more of a, what happened to this guy? Okay. Oh, well, Judy's putting her neck really on the line here, and maybe I should start putting something on the line as well. And it becomes very much of, he's letting the veil of the tough guy, the sleazy con artist, and he's just letting that kind of lift a bit, just to, like, he's still being himself again. Like I said, his character isn't changing. It's just his what he's giving into his character is changing. He's no longer putting up these false walls and this coping mechanism that he's created for himself. It's more about the actual Nick coming through. The Nick that wanted to become a junior Ranger Scout. The Nick that had hopes for the world and had his own dreams as a kid. It's the Nick that is genuinely curious about this case. The one who wants to see Judy's efforts pay off. And that is a more, like, interesting story from my perspective. Because it's like, yeah, Judy's story is really good, and I really appreciate her determination. But I don't exactly think anywhere in her police academy training they were like, the first chance you get, work with the mob, blackmail a con artist, and break all the rules. But on the other side of that, Nick is accustomed to breaking the rules, and it's very much in his character to know how to break the rules without actually breaking them. And so seeing them play off each other, a very much inexperienced cop and a very much experienced con artist, working together to kind of balance the other out and learn how to bend the rules correctly without breaking any rules and putting anyone in danger, and still getting the results that you want. And then, as Nick's facade kind of starts to drop and you see his real character come through, then they get into the run-in with the Savage Jaguar, and then Bogo and the rest of the police show up, and, like, they're just way too dismissive of his officer's witnesses and the witness with her, Nick. They're just way too dismissive of their, like, testimony. It's like, you know what? I don't believe what you said because I don't like you. We're not going to look at the security footage that you then go do. No, I don't like you, so you must be wrong. And then right after that scene is you get a little glimpse into Nick's backstory. And it just is always so emotional for me. Like, it always just, like, gets you, like, worked up and you're like, oh, not gonna cry this time. But when I first watched it in theaters, I almost cried. It was that sad for me. Just because it was just so relatable to me at the time. Because I was picked on a lot in elementary and middle school and even some in high school. And so, like, I honestly knew what it felt like to be like Nick, to be alone and unwanted and just treated so differently than everyone else. It's like everyone else around you seems like they fit in and they're all great. But then here I am and everyone's just like, nope, you can't be in this group. And it's like, great. Moving on from that, one observation I made about the effects of the Night Howler, like the way it operates is that, like, within seconds of getting hit by the Night Howler bullet, you just immediately go savage, was what they're calling it. And the way I saw it was, it operates more like the rabies virus, where rather than turning these civilized animals into just actual animals and they're, like, operating like a lion would in a zoo, it's very much like these animals are just attacking anything and everything in sight with no discrimination, much like an animal infected with rabies would do. The Nick and Judy fighting and misunderstanding each other is a very common cliche. It's similar to the liar revealed cliche. But you know what? As cliche as it all is, it was very quick. You know, it was only a couple of minutes of screen time. And when they do make up, the fact that Judy is just sorry, that is enough to win Nick over. It's not like Nick turns around and is like, you have to try harder than that. No, just the fact that Judy is very sorry that she hurt her close friend after being completely wrong And she admits that she's wrong, and the fact that she is sorry and that Nick accepts her apology shows that this isn't just a movie cliche like a lot of other movies do, but it is an actual, like, these two have actually become close friends, even in such a short amount of time. Like, on top of all this, one thing that I really like toward the ending is when they're on the train with the evidence, and, you know, they jump off the train explodes, and Judy's like, we lost it all. And Nick pulls out the briefcase with enough evidence to, like, convict them and be like, we got our evidence here. In the same manner that Judy, at the beginning of the film, when she got the tickets for her friend, because the bully of her childhood town, Gideon Gray, had stolen these amusement park tickets from her friends, and very much in the same kind of way, Judy was able to get the tickets and give them back to her friends without, like, you know, Gideon realizing that they were gone. In the very same way, Judy thought that all of the evidence was destroyed in the explosion, and then Nick goes, not all of it, and has the case. Just as a side note before we, like, you know, get to the ending and wrap it all up, when Bellwether is revealed to be the bad guy, she just goes full Bond villain. Like, as soon as they know who, like, what her deal is, and she's the actual person orchestrating all of this, she just goes full Bond villain. She's, like, taunting the hero. She's, like, trying to kill the hero. She's just very much, it's just a Bond villain. It's hilarious. And then, you know, from there, the actual ending is very touching and very heartwarming. And it just wraps everything up very nicely, and it's just great. It's wonderful. Closing thoughts, the whole film is still just a blast to watch through. Where some movies, when you go back and watch them again, it kind of feels like they're dragging, or it feels like they're mistimed, or it's like you didn't enjoy it as well off the big screen. You didn't enjoy it as well without the audience there too. That's never been the case with Zootopia. For me in Zootopia, it's very much, I can go back and watch this movie 1,000 times, and I will always enjoy it. It's just, there's always something new to discover. There's always something enjoyable to return to. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And the next movie that I will be reviewing is Ghost Rider. I have talked about this movie previously in one of my old movie review segments. Didn't talk about it that great because I hadn't seen it in years. So, look forward to that. And I'll see you guys in the next part. Take care.
Man, where the heck is he? He said he was just getting the movie. Oh, I bet he went and did the review without me. Just in case, I better wait.
Look at that rascal. He's running around ruining my audio, but I love him dearly. Look at that face. How could this not be a face you love?